Okay, talking today about Black Lives Matter, but under the topic of magnesium deficiency. I think that when you study um, different ethnocentric pathologies, you see a lot of diabetes in the black community, and magnesium deficiency is, of course, widespread, pretty much worldwide to anyone, especially anyone older than 10 years old at this point. We're pretty much 95% deficient, and they're even saying there's no need to test anymore because the typical blood test that we take doesn't prove anything because most of the magnesium is found in the tissue, soft tissue, intracellular. There's 60% in the bone and then like 20% in the soft tissues, and 20 to 40% in the soft tissues. So you have already you have the magnesium, but this is all happening intracellularly. That's where most of the magnesium is in those tissues, not extracellular. So, this reality is not just affecting black populations, but it's affecting everyone. But there's more pronounced deficiencies in the black community. I think a lot of this may have to do with food and magnesium depletion in the foods. And then, of course, you have different types of, like if you have a culture, like, for example, the African culture has, there's a lot of really good fruits and there's a lot of fibers and fruits that they have available in that part of the world. And now in the American market that was converted, basically what the displacement of the traditional foods really affected poorer communities much more than it did other communities because of lack of diversity in their choices and nutrient density. And so what happens is once you displace the butter and the palm, that's the famous oil from Africa. I'm not saying everything has to go back to Africa. I'm just giving like a historical, traditional perspective. But once you pull that palm oil, that red palm, and some of those ideas out, and you replace that with corn oil or soy oil or some other kind of oil which messes up the endocrine system and is depleted of the same healthy benefits and healthy fats, well, then you have less than optimal, by far, mineral absorption. And so that's going to create deficiencies. And that's one, is the fats. And then two would be the sugars, too. Like even the sugars, like a lot of the juices and things like that, which would be coming from natural fruit or whatever, is now being, fruit juice and this kind of thing, which has become popular. And this is just magnesium stealing because you need magnesium to assimilate the sugar properly. So it's going to pull that magnesium out and deplete the body in the process if you keep eating things deficient in magnesium, where magnesium is needed for that same thing's own digestion. So it's like a depletion as you eat kind of thing. On top of the fact that there's none in there, it's going to pull out what you have inside. So this is going to create a state of havoc in the body where the magnesium cannot replenish itself, and it gets pulled out of the soft tissues, and so then it's in, like I said, it's 60% in the bone, 20% in the soft tissues, and 20% in the muscles, but this is all happening intracellularly, and so this is going to be pulled from these tissues into these cells to try to make up for this deficiency. So the black community is more affected than any other community, historically, one of the most affected through these ethnopathologies, which are ethnocentric pathologies, such as diabetes, metabolic syndrome, and everything else. So I would just say that in order to take away, to help these communities, not like in a political way, but just in a more general, global way, magnesium wisdom, magnesium knowledge. I mean, the urban communities especially have lost completely their traditions when it comes to like thermal springs and um, thermal bathing and spa or what would you call that? Source, hot springs, all of these kind of movements that used to be part of our culture, these were eradicated from the poorer, more urban climates even earlier. So these I'm saying these things are gone for all of us now to a large degree. In France and Europe, you still have some access to these traditions. I mean, it's even part of the medical system to advise. Doctors prescribe people to go to certain areas, and it's paid by the Social Security system there to prescribe certain mineral-rich regions, water sources, and thermal cures for certain conditions, from lung conditions, and arthritis, and different things, convalescence. So you have this already set up, but these traditions are completely lost on the more urban or less fortunate, poorer communities. And so historically, they're even further away from where they used to be. And so what that means is like, some of the worst communities with the magnesium dependencies, not just black, also Arab as well. You have a lot of rich magnesium soil in these desert regions. There's a lot of magnesium, and so these cultures eat a lot of root vegetables, and there's a lot of like really healthy root grains and root vegetables, and even the grains themselves like millet, and so they have a lot of fiber, and this fiber creates a lot of magnesium too. And so when it's fermented and processed right, so when you pull a culture from its natural origin, which is high in magnesium, the soil is, and you put it in a new culture, or it's through migration and everything else, then there's like an even stronger deficiency that sets in, because there was such a locally available and easy to find thing, and now that thing is like nearly impossible to find. In the same way, you've pulled all of its base foods away from it, and so it's very difficult for people to maintain. There's a huge explosion of magnesium consumption by the Arab community and Muslim communities in France, and this is connected to this reality, is that they've lost their traditional source, and so the displacement has created a lot of other problems as far as magnesium deficiency. So magnesium deficiency is a key here. For diabetes, we all know that there's many studies on how magnesium helps with the pulling glucose out of the blood and turning it into glycogen in the liver and everything else, which keeps the blood in a healthier, less sticky state. And then we have a much more healthy system, basically. Of course, the magnesium can only function as far as the nutrition is adequate. If we're drinking like sodas or anything like that, well, that's going to pull all that system apart and put it more into a state of panic than equilibrium. But in general, this community needs more than any others to have this wisdom and to start having these simple, natural supplements and things which can help. Now, the fact that it goes through the skin, the transdermal route, the topical magnesium, is interesting as well, because it's kind of like a food in a way. And a lot of these cultures can also be more tactile. They can have more of this approach to the skin as well. I know that in the African culture with the shea butter movement, they're very well connected to taking care of their skin and everything. So this can fit right in with that culture and help to bring magnesium to those who need it the most. So this is not a Black Lives Matter political podcast, but it's just a podcast on trying to help from my angle in the best way I can to address the number one deficiency in that community. And then you work your way on down to vitamin D and doing that in the right way through fermented cod liver oil and the K2, which is another huge deficiency in that community, through emu oil. And so you need all these three working together. That's called the threefold remedy if you want to look it up. But that wisdom could be brought about for this community too, even if it's just starting in certain parts of that community and going on down. But I know that magnesium has enough abundance to help here. It just takes education. So anyway, hope I can help in some way. And yeah, as somebody recently said on the TV, let's not believe that everybody's divided against each other. That's a false belief and a false paradigm. There's some division, but in general, the majority of people can see through a world of strife, chaos, fire, and division, and a world of peace. And so we should not cheapen our view of humanity in thinking people can't understand that. Just because the 5% media is able to control an image doesn't mean that everyone else is down with that image. So don't be fooled. Or as Bob Marley used to say, don't let them fool you. So anyway, hopefully that can be of help to somebody.
When it comes to magnesium, always get the right stuff. Do not go cheap in this area. There's a lot of stuff out there that's $1.50 a week, and we're $3 a week, so you could say it's double the price. But there's a lot of fake stuff out there, even stuff that's pretending to be Zechstein. It's called ancient Permian, genuine Zechstein. There's all sorts of labels out there, and they're self-certified. And the only real official seal that you could find from the Vendam, which is the city in Holland from which this natural salt pillar formation is, where you find this natural state magnesium chloride stone called bischofite in large quantity, is using the logo Zechstein inside. So if the Zechstein inside logo doesn't appear, is not on the bottle, it's not from the city of Venn, it's not the real thing, it's not even from Holland. So there's a lot of fake imports. The word Zechstein can't be controlled, so there's a lot of fake UPS, USP, pharmaceutical grade, and all these different companies, Spray and Permian and Trans Ancient, and you see these different labelings, and they're using the word Zechstein abusively. So the only way to guarantee the right thing is probably to spend a little bit more. The thing is it's not that expensive. It's $3 a week to knock out the #1 deficiency in the world. And so it's not something that we should play with just getting super cheap on. It's kind of like getting really cheap on our salt and eggs and milk and bread and things like that are so basic. We want to spend money in these areas to where we can ensure a better product, because when it's not coming from the Zechstein inside and that logo's not on the bottle, first off, it's solvent extracted, it's chemically treated, and so therefore it's not the same at the molecular level as far as chelation, uptake, bonding, conjugation, and all these other membrane transport and connectivity and calcium channel blocking. All the things that magnesium can do are limited by the fact that it's been chemically treated, and it's no longer, I guess you could say, sticky. It's sticky as a substance no matter what they do with it, but it's no longer sticky to a molecular level and able to chelate and make those bonds and conjugations in the right way. So you want to get something that's done right by nature and pure. And so this guarantees that. Not only does it guarantee that, but it also guarantees that people aren't mixing some good stuff with some bad stuff and then selling that as Zechstein or whatever, because as soon as the label, the logo's not on the bottle, you can't rescan that bottle and tell what it is. So there's a way to just keep this fakery going. And so we want to try to find the right stuff. I guess most people, it's not that they're all malintentioned, but it's just that there's this kind of lack of consciousness around the fact that magnesium, oh, it's all the same, it's just a mineral, do what you want with it, but it's not. And so the same with milk, the same with bread, everything is different. You just can't say pasteurized like milk from these industrialized cattle is the same as small Jersey cattle, raw milk, and so it's just worlds apart. And so don't be fooled. So get the right stuff. That's for the first part. The second part is it's in glass. So if you want the right stuff, get it in glass. These glass blue bottles, and this is the signature series of the Zechstein inside, as far as that type of quality that we could use to make sure the product has no endocrine disruptors, no chemical microplastic leaching into the product, and then that, once again, going into the body. Now, you don't want that in the body because we're trying to get those out of the body, and magnesium conjugations help pull that out of the body through enzymes. And so we don't want to bring some in at the molecular level on that same molecule. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. So do the right thing, get it done right, and get the right price point. $25 for 2 months is very cheap, and it's a good price point to cover the deficiency of the century, basically. So come check us out at theheartoftradition.com and get your own.